The strangest thing I saw that morning, other than Pamela, and who is Pamela?
Mom of
Mikhail's mom, right, who abandoned her, was a sign for rhubarb wine. If I hadn't been in such a hurry to flee my pursuer, I might have stopped for a taste. I could have used some wine. Pamela's questions bothered me. Just outside Hill City, I came to a place called Mistletoe Ranch, which wasn't really a ranch, but a Christmas emporium. A sign in front of the building proclaimed it the ultimate Christmas store. Mikhail was a die-hard fan of Christmas, and, as she had in so many of her passions, converted me as well. Even in spring, I couldn't resist the allure of the season. Since I hadn't seen Pamela for more than an hour, I went inside. The place was indeed full of Christmas. Tinny banjo Christmas music played from overhead speakers, and the room smelled of pine and buttercream-scented candles. The walls were shelved and piled high with hundreds of unique holiday decorations, knickknacks, and collectibles, from Betty Boop Christmas ornaments to Elvis stockings to miniature porcelain Christmas villages. There were a few things I wanted, but since purchasing anything I'd have to carry would have been absurd, although I did consider purchasing a Marilyn Monroe ornament to hang from the back of my pack, I left empty-handed. My stop wasn't a waste of time, though. The visit had distracted me from the emotions stirred up by my encounter with Pamela. Whatever the season, a healthy dose of Christmas lifts the spirits. As I opened the door to leave, I looked both ways to see if Pamela was there. She was. I don't know how she knew I had gone into the store. She was nowhere in sight when I got in, but there she was, standing across the road, waiting for me. I started off again, walking even faster than usual. Within 15 minutes, Pamela was out of sight, though by now I no longer assumed that she'd given up her quest. A few miles past Hill City, the highway split. I continued on 16 East until it ran north again. Around noon, I reached the historic Rockerville Cafe, where I stopped to eat a hamburger and failed to learn what made the place historic. Actually, I didn't care what made the place historic. After traveling through Idaho, where everything was historic, the label had lost its luster. I didn't stay long. I hoped I had lost Pamela where the highway split, but in case I hadn't, I didn't want to give her the chance to catch up. I was relieved she wasn't standing there as I left the cafe. A couple miles from the cafe, a Forest Service sign informed me that I was leaving the Black Hills National Forest, though you wouldn't know it by looking as far as I could see. The road continued to be lined with forests as well as tourist attractions, hoping to catch the crumbs from Mount Rushmore's table. Please don't be doing any work while I'm reading, it's just not good manners. I passed another Christmas shop. Apparently Christmas is a moneymaker in South Dakota. And Bear Country USA, a 250-acre drive-through wildlife park, boasting the world's largest collection of privately owned black bears. I could see some of the bears from the highway, and I thought back to the grizzly I had encountered in the 3 wild weeks earlier in Yellowstone. These captive bears didn't look nearly as lively or dangerous. In fact, they looked sedated and about as frisky as my father an hour after Thanksgiving dinner. There were more tourist attractions in this stretch than perhaps anywhere else in America. I passed a reptile zoo, a wax museum, a corn maze, and a mountain zip line, the latter of which reminded me of my 11th birthday. That was a birthday to remember. Actually, it was impossible to forget. My dad, in a rare moment of introspection, decided that in the absence of a mother, a dutiful father should probably throw his only son a birthday party at least once in his life. This was something that he'd never done before, so not surprisingly, he was clueless. I once saw my dad dismantle a 5-horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine from a lawnmower, strip it down to its block, then reassemble it perfectly. But he couldn't put a birthday party together to save his life. He started by inviting random children from the neighborhood, many of whom I didn't know, including 2 sisters whose family had just migrated to the U.S. from Hungary. The girls didn't speak English, or at least not that any of us had heard, and they huddled together the whole time speaking in frightened whispers to each other. My father borrowed a minivan and took all 7 of us to a Pizza Hut, which wasn't a bad call. Then to a zip line he'd found a coupon for, located about 45 minutes from our home. The Hungarian girls only became relevant to the party when the younger of the girls, none of us ever learned either of their names, somehow got her long blonde hair caught in the pulley, stopping her mid-ride and leaving her dangling hundreds of feet above the ground, screaming hysterically. The rescue mission was well worth the price of admission. We and a few dozen others from waiting groups gaped as one of the zip line workers donned thick gloves and shimmied down the line until he was close enough to cut the girl's hair with a pair of wire cutters, sending her rolling down the line. We clapped and hooted when she was free, unanimously judging the rescue operation a great success. All of us others but the sisters, who apparently thought otherwise, evidenced by their red and tear-stained faces. The older girl kept examining her sister's chopped hair and crying. When we got back to our neighborhood, my dad dropped the sisters off in their driveway and sped away before they got to the door. I asked if he should tell their parents what had happened, but my dad just mumbled something like, they wouldn't understand, and they're used to things like that. I pondered that statement for years, and every time I heard something about a communist country, I imagined unhappy girls with erratically lopped off tufts of hair. By twilight, I was close to Rapid City, and had I been in a car, I would have driven on to the city center, but I had already walked 20 miles, and there was an ominously steep hill looming ahead of me, so I ended my day outside the city limits at the Happy Holiday Motel. I expected at any moment to see Pamela step out of a car behind me, but she never did. I was foolishly optimistic that she had finally given up and gone home. I was wrong.